Buenas noches para todos. Hamzu Tautasai Paduta Zantinian Guahusi Carlotta Delian Guerrero.
Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday edition of MCV News. I'm Glenn Wakai.
For today's sports fans, I'm Longshot Willie. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Longshot and his voice will be back later in the cast with the sports report. Let's turn now to the stories topping our cast this evening. Senators are in session at this hour. The session had originally been scheduled for 10 o'clock this morning, but was postponed until 3:30 this afternoon. Attorney Edward Manabusan was there this morning meeting with the Senate leadership in Senate President Juan Demapon's office. Manabusan comes before the senators to be confirmed or denied as a new Superior Court judge. We have a cameraman at the Senate session and we'll show you the session in its entirety later this week, as well as show highlights of the proceedings on our news tomorrow night.
And the much anticipated expansion of the Saipan Harbor was supposed to make everyone happy, but many are now voicing their displeasure. There are allegations of improprieties in the way the Commonwealth Ports Authority awards contracts, and a board chairman who wields too much power. CPA officials say there's nothing wrong with their procedures. Tonight we begin a series of reports on what's going on at the Commonwealth Ports Authority. It's the biggest contract ever awarded by the Commonwealth. A lot of big companies were attracted. When the bids were opened in mid-December, 8 companies were vying for the contract. In mid-January, the number was whittled down to 4. There are numerous complaints that only one of the 4 were evaluated. CPA spokesman Frank Rosario says that's true, only because the CPA planned to negotiate with the lowest bidder first.
And if our negotiations failed, then we were going to go to the next lowest bidder, and so on and so forth down the line. However, after negotiating with Samsung, which submitted the lowest price, we concluded that they are responsive.
After being discounted early in the process, JG Sablan Construction responded by filing an appeal with the board.
And at that time, you will give JG Sablan the reasons for why his proposal was not accepted.
Yes, they will also give us their opinions on why they should be awarded, and we will listen. And after that, we will make a decision.
Rosario doubts if Sablan's company has the financial wherewithal to complete such a large project. Another disgruntled bidder is now taking the CPA to court over the way the contract was awarded. But Rosario says the Taiwan Marine Group submitted an incomplete application. There was no financial statement included, and documents in the packet were in a foreign language.
They were submitted and they're all in Chinese. It is not our obligation, it is not CPA's obligation to go out and hire a Chinese translator to translate the documents into English.
There are allegations of problems brewing within the CPA board itself. Tomorrow we'll examine infighting amongst members. Meanwhile, postal officials are trying to deliver a lost colleague. Police officers are conducting a massive investigation on the whereabouts of acting Chalancanoa postmaster Joe Miller. Miller has been missing since late last month. DPS Captain Joe Camacho says CK Postal Inspector Richard Hall reported that Miller was last seen 3 weeks ago renting a car from Automotion at the airport. Hall reports that Miller's rented car was found parked at the airport on January 27th, and Miller has been absent from work since then. At this time, there is no firm evidence that Miller is missing. Hall is conducting his own investigation. Late this afternoon, Captain Camacho revealed that officers are now reviewing airline records that could indicate if Miller possibly left the island.
Sometimes when island leaders get into a pushing match over principle and procedure, the little guy is the one who gets hurt. A clear example of that scenario has come to light recently, the CUC's disconnection policy for unpaid power bills. The CUC board needed $4.2 million that it didn't have to pay its back bills to Shell Marianas. When the Speaker of the House refused to call a session to appropriate the money unless the governor could identify a source of funding, the CUC board turned to the private sector for help. And they also put the squeeze on the people who owed them money. Too often that meant disconnecting power to the people at the bottom of the economic ladder. One man threatened with disconnection decided to fight back. Here's a look at Coblerville resident Ralph Gomez in action.
Capitol Hill is the seat of the CNMI government. Residents put their faith in the people they've elected to office and hope that in a time of need, their voices will be heard. Lawmakers spend a good part of their time responding directly to the needs of their constituents. But first, you have to find them.
Mr. Villagomez, you know,
I've noticed you're wandering around the governor's office, now you're here over the legislature. Can you tell us what brings you here to the legislature today?
Oh, I'm here to see all these representatives here. So I'm one of the low-income people and suffering of CUC cutting the powers.
Vito Gomez is in the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, or LEHEAP. He says he's current in his monthly bills to CUC, but is now being threatened with disconnection on March 3rd for $829 that he owes from the time before he enrolled in LEHEAP. With a wife and kids to consider, Ralph Vito Gomez was determined to get help from the lawmakers that he helped put in office.
I'm one of the concerned citizens, that really, want to see the settlement of this matter. Stop fighting, each other on the political. Let's get together and say, join in and, solve these problems.
Finding a lawmaker to talk to on a Senate session day wasn't that easy, though.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is it possible I can see the Senate President?
He's here right now.
He's in a meeting. In a meeting? Oh, okay. So I will wait around until the...
After walking up and down the Senate, peeking into doors, and talking to staff members, Vito Gomez found an open door that led to two senators.
Good morning.
Hey, all right. What can we do for you, my friend?
Ralph, how are you? I know, Ralph, how are you? Are you tough? Sit down, sit down.
Senator Enos and Senator Torres are used to deciphering the intricacies of complex legislation and quickly got to the root of Vito Gomez's CUC billing problem.
Do you have any question as to the amount? You agree with that amount?
Oh, I agree with that. I owe that amount. But
how much can you afford to pay?
Like I can afford about $50 every payday.
So about $100 a month.
$100 a month.
How much is your bill a month?
But after further questioning, Vito Gomez said he'd like to pay the bill off in one payment.
Do you want to use that $1,000 tax refund to pay for your CUC bill?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, I want this one if they can advance, because I don't want...
Well, we will work that out. We will work that out. But you say you're expecting $1,000 for your tax refund for FY 1992.
92.
And you wish to take all of those, whatever your CUC billing is, to pay from that tax refund. Are you sure of that?
Yes.
I think we can make that arrangement,
Yeah.
too.
Senator Torres immediately got on the phone to verify with other government officials that Vito Gomez's tax refund check could be signed over to CUC for his back bills. And then the two seasoned lawmakers helped draft an authorization letter.
To offer?
The letter was copied to CUC Executive Director Ray Guerrero, who later this afternoon confirmed what Enos and Torres did was acceptable. And then Vito Gomez showed his appreciation in the only way that he could.
My family is a big family here in Saipan.
Only five members in the family? Or?
It includes like Castro, Villa Gomez, Pangilinan.
You control.
So it's a union. So
Malik.
we already. So it's gonna be helping you two in the near future.
Okay, brother.
Yeah.
CUC Executive Director Ray Guerrero says he has instructed his staff to accept authorization letters signing over tax refunds for power bills.
And coming up next, the Vice Speaker learns a faster way to move and groove in Washington, D.C. to get things done. And Bishop Tomas Camacho talks about the new anti-prostitution law.
An anti-prostitution bill was signed into law yesterday by Governor Lorenzo de Leon Guerrero. This morning, MCV News spoke to Bishop Tomas Camacho, and he told us how he feels about that new law.
That the governor finally signed the bill, anti-prostitution bill here for the Northern Marianas, and I congratulate all the women and everybody that worked so hard to work on this law.
Yesterday at that signing, many House and Senate leaders said that prostitution has no place in the CNMI, that it promotes disease and illness here and promotes moral degradation. The bishop also says prostitution has no place in the Commonwealth.
At the same time, it's bad for the morale of the people, bad for the health. You know, this is one of the best ways to spread disease, and bad for our children.
As we said yesterday, the bill was signed in the presence of several congressmen, and that bill had been drafted and introduced by Congressman Jess Attow and Congressman Heinz Hofschneider.
While some wage war on prostitution, others wage war on drugs. The Pacific Insular Regional Anti-Substance Abuse Program meeting kicked off this morning. Representatives from Washington and from the Pacific Islands are here to discuss the federal funds available to aid in the fight against drugs. Executive Director of the Criminal Justice Planning Agency, Jack Ogumoro, is hoping to obtain over $400,000 for 10 programs in the CNMI.
We're talking about prevention, treatment, and interdiction of drugs.
This morning, introductions and status reports were made. Major Mike Corhonen says tomorrow the group will see one drug program in action.
And tomorrow, we're going to be looking at a practical demonstration of the dog interdiction programs being conducted here in the airport by the Customs, CNMI Customs. Then on through the week, we'll be hearing proposals for new programs from each one of the jurisdictions, and the working group will be discussing their applicability of the regional programming, and that'll wrap it up.
That drug conference wraps up on Saturday. House Vice Speaker Diego Benavente learned a thing or two recently while in Washington at the Time of Change conference. Government and education leaders from the insular areas gathered in Washington for panel discussions with federal presenters on areas of mutual concern. Benavente says the CNMI problems paled in comparison to those of Guam and the Virgin Islands. He says he also learned from the feds that some 902 issues could move faster through Congress if separated from the 902 talks.
But the idea of pointing out a specific issue, you know, it can be dealt with better than if we were to include it in a whole bunch of issues. Like I said, the whole putting it all together in this 902 negotiations. If we think that there's one item or one issue that is very important to us, dealing with it specifically with the same group with the same people in Congress, that it would get a better attention and better result or a quicker
Benavente says recognition of the NMI's 200-mile exclusive economic zone could be just one of the issues separated from 902 and handled directly with the Congressional Committee with oversight responsibility.
In more financial news, 'tis the most taxing time of the year. Time to scratch your head and stand in line. For first-time filers, the ordeal is a rite of passage. To ease some of that pain, Pamela Picardal reports on where you can seek pre-tax assistance.
Tens and hundreds of people from different walks of life are seen milling in at the CNMI Revenue and Taxation Office. And still more alien and local workers are expected to file their income tax returns before the April 15th set deadline. But what about first-timers? Rev Tax Chief Juan Evangelista told MCV News it isn't easy to detect taxpayers filing up for the very first time. Evangelista says if the taxpayers need some help in terms of computing their taxes, he advised them to seek free assistance from their Tax and Rev Susupi office as soon as possible. He explains door number 1 serves as the assistance center, which also aids people who failed to file their income tax returns in the previous years.
All you have to do is fill out the returns properly, drop it in the mail. They don't have to line up. We don't want anybody lining up just to drop off a return.
But don't you think that it's also complicated for those who don't have access to computers?
Well, they don't really need a computer. In most cases, again, the computation of the tax is easy if they follow the instructions. Or if they really simply cannot do it, they can come over here. We provide free service. Go to door number 1 and then they'll be taken care of. If they want to come and drop off the tax return when it's completed, there is, we have 2 windows in the front. The one that's facing the road, we have 2 windows. One is just to drop off the returns. And the other one is to pick up the forms.
Rev Tax Chief points out their office is also faced with some difficulties. One is the failure on the part of some taxpayers to complete the needed information on their W-2 forms. He reminds those who may seek assistance from their office to fill up their W-2 forms with the proper information.
Just come over with the W-2. Nothing else. They don't even know their forwarding address. They don't even know their social security. Of course, we can pick it up from the W-2. But they don't even know the social security of their dependents, which you have to provide. Or if you're married, filing as a separate, then you have to know the social security of the spouse.
He adds, though, that they're coping very well with another burden on their back, a number of tax evaders.
There are some, of course. There are some, but then we just have to deal with these people separately. You know, we have to go out and look for them. We may have to conduct an audit. You know, there are all kinds of enforcement measures that we can impose.
And we're able to get them too.
Of course, yes. I'm not saying that we got all of them, but we're catching them.
Tomorrow, MCV News will tackle on the reasons for the delay of the issuance of refund checks to some individuals. In Susupe, I'm Pamela Picardal, MCV News.
Awareness to environmental issues will increase during the week of April 18th through the 24th. Today, the governor signed a proclamation setting that week aside for Environmental Week. He made that announcement today while surrounded by DEQ officials.
Much concerned of and very supportive, just to make sure that the environmental and so-called the health protections of our people is being protected and guaranteed a clean environment to each members of our citizens in the community. Well, okay, thank you again. Thank you.
Governor's signature on the proclamation also declared April 26th as Earth Day. Both events set well with the environmentalists there. The director of DEQ, Miriam Seaman, says the push will be towards recycling.
Of our monument downstairs right next to the flagpole. And one focus that we'll be doing this year is the recycling program, and the theme for this year is reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Seaman says her agency will focus their education campaign primarily at the island's children. More big bucks in Major League Baseball with spring training just around the corner, and in a spur of the moment, the NBA team from San Antonio is hot, hot, hot.
It's tea time this Saturday, and I don't mean Lipton. The Rafalawatch Golf Association, better known as RGA, is having a mini tourney to raise funds to send athletes to the mini South Pacific Games in Vanuatu. The fee is $40, and the events will take place at Coral Ocean Point. The tournament is limited to the first 20 members on a first-come, first-served basis. For more information, please call Rose Igotol at 234-3690. Also, there will be a meeting for the Saipan Major League Baseball this Friday, 8:30 a.m. at the Grand Hotel, and you can call Rose again for more information. In the NBA, the San Antonio Spurs are hot, all because of their new coach, John Lucas. It's not Mr. Robinson's neighborhood anymore, and here's why.
San Antonio may be Mr. Robinson's neighborhood, but its residents are on the run, literally. Since John Lucas took over the team in mid-December, the Spurs are scoring more points off a fast-paced, run-and-gun transition game that took hold from day one.
They said they wanted to run, and the first day after we ran, they were also out of shape.
John wanted me to pick the tempo up. He wanted me to pick up the pressure defense, and those are the things that I really do well. Hit open jump shots, and when you got people doubling down on Antoine Carr, David Robinson, J.R. Reed, that's bread and butter for me.
Spreading the floor has become a staple of Lucas's Spurs. Improved perimeter passing has created open jump shots and, not surprisingly, better field goal percentages. Elliott's shooting is up 10% under Lucas. David Robinson, Dale Ellis, and Antoine Carr have all improved since Lucas took over the team. In fact, the Spurs are the only NBA team with all 5 starters shooting more than 50%.
On this team, we have 4 scorers on our starting 5. Everybody can score, and the guys that we bring off the bench, Lloyd Daniels, J.R.E., Vinny Del Negro, can score.
And don't forget about the Admiral. The opposition can't. Lucas still relies on a post-up isolation game featuring Robinson, almost exclusively the Spurs' offensive set under Tarkanian. But now, opponents have less of a chance to collapse to the interior to defend the big man because of the Spurs' renewed confidence in the outside jumper.
John has said, David, you know, most of the guys you're going to play, you know, I can take you and isolate you and work you on them, or, you know, we're going to get you in the post and run some things for you.
Which more often than not creates a mismatch with another Spurs threat. For example, against the Clippers, the Spurs recognize 6'8" Sean Elliott, picked up by a smaller Ron Harper. Elliott drives to the hoop, hits the off-balance shot, and gets the foul. A versatile shooter in a diversified offense that seems to be working, because with 8 straight wins, every day is a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
You know, we got incredible scorers on the squad and guys who want to see each other succeed. So I mean, when you get a combination like that, you gotta feel good about it.
We've come to the end of this sports page, but don't go away. Our new weather bunny is next. Stay with us.
Well, not quite the sexy weather bunny, but let's hop into the forecast nonetheless. It was raining, it was pouring, and hopefully you didn't slip and bump your head this morning. With that thought, let's head into our weather forecast. Cloudy skies can still be seen overhead, and that will continue throughout the night with scattered showers. Forecasters say the mercury will dip into the low 70s. A warning to those who are taking out their boats tonight. The seas will be moderate to rough at 6 to 9 feet. Surf will be hazardous 7 to 10 feet on northern clockwise through southeastern exposures and 4 to 7 feet elsewhere. The tide will rise to 2.3 feet at 7:08 tomorrow morning and will sink to a low of 1.5 feet just after noon. The sun will rise at 6:45 tomorrow morning and will bring in a day of mostly cloudy skies with isolated light showers. You can expect a high temperature in the low 80s. Next, we'll be showering you with a few messages, and we'll be back to close the newscast. Stay with us.
We're out of time, but before we head out, we'd like to let you know how you can get in touch with us in case you would ever like to give us a news story or compliment us on one of the ones we did or complain about one of the ones we did. You can call the MCV Newsroom on our direct line at 235-6369. On behalf of my colleagues in front of and behind the camera here at MCV, we'd like to thank you for spending part of your evening with us, and we'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Adios.